The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Notre Dame had their backs against the wall, but they dug deep and rallied back.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
All right, Luke, I knew I was going to have some FOMO if I missed this one. And all day, as Notre Dame was getting ready to play Penn State, I started to feel it more and more. And then after Notre Dame won that game 27-24, I was sitting in my apartment thinking, man, I would do anything to be in Miami for that game. And you were there. So the floor is yours for our Boots on the Ground report from that Orange Bowl.
Historically, Hard Rock Stadium, Sun Life Stadium, whatever you want to call it, has been a horrible, horrible place to attend games. However, this one on January 9th, 2025, what an awesome atmosphere. It might have been the most fun sporting event I have ever attended. Just so many twists and turns where it felt like Notre Dame was completely dead in the water in the first half. I'm talking to people at halftime in the concourse, and it feels like anytime I've ever had a conversation at halftime in that stadium, in the concourse, where just the vibes are horribly low, and for Notre Dame to come out in the second half and fight and win that game the way they did, just an unbelievable experience. Walking out of that stadium, incredible joy, then turned into one of those nights where just felt like you couldn't go to sleep in the best way possible, and having an early flight the next morning out. There is nothing like leaving an airport and seeing opposing fans just devastated in security. I was thinking to myself, it's one of the only times I've ever gotten on a flight like that in a good mood. And wow, that is just, it was all time. And for a game that I really didn't plan on going to until right after the Sugar Bowl, just after everything that happened in New Orleans, I knew I had to be there. It was awesome, and a night I will never forget.
I can imagine looking over at those Penn State fans thinking, hey, buddy, I've been there. I've been there a lot of times, and those flights back are just not fun at all because you're sleep deprived. You're just so disappointed and everything. But, yeah, I'm glad that you got a refreshing change of pace this time around. That was an awesome win. And I'm curious because I feel like most Notre Dame fans who I've talked to about this have differing answers. Was the Penn State win more satisfying to you than the win over Georgia?
It's an interesting question because I think that the Georgia win in a lot of respects felt like a breakthrough for sure. But maybe this is more satisfying or more relieving just because there's a multitude of reasons actually to account for that. One, Notre Dame doesn't historically win games like that where they're dead in the water, and then just the way they fought back with so many things going against them, from injuries to horrendous officiating to just generally being dead in the first half. And then secondly, especially for me personally, as a guy who has been a long critic of Penn State and James Franklin, who only did more to enhance or increase that disdain I have for him with his just ridiculous actions this week. That was a game Notre Dame had to win. They had to beat Penn State. There was not a less deserving fan base and team out there to make the national championship after everything that was handed to them on a silver platter. And so I think that it was more satisfying just because Notre Dame earned that. And Penn State, in my opinion, would not have, given the path that they had been given. And just, frankly, it was ridiculous that so many people were anointing them when they've literally never won anything like that and just got handed a path to the semifinals. So, yes, it was more satisfying.
It is interesting seeing some of the responses about Penn State from people in the national media and even within their own fan base. It's like this was the year where they were supposed to make all these strides, and then it ends with them losing the CFP semifinal, which on one hand should feel like a great accomplishment, but at the other, it's like they still haven't beaten anyone that big. I mean, I don't think their fan base, even though they might have said it in the lead up, like, yeah, winning over Boise State was a big deal. Like, really? Was it all that satisfying? So for Notre Dame, I'm with you. I actually think the win over Penn State was more satisfying. One, because the game itself was a lot more fun. Like, beating Georgia was great. That was not the most entertaining game. There were a few moments, really. It was just the middle two that were really, really exciting. And then other than that, Notre Dame was just kind of hanging on. Whereas this game, there was so many twists and turns and highs and lows. Like after Notre Dame went up 17-10 on that Jeremiah Love touchdown run, I'm thinking, oh, they've got this one. They're going to run away with it in the fourth quarter. And then give credit to Penn State. They scored 2 touchdowns in the span of 3 minutes. They take the lead. I'm thinking, man, Notre Dame might be dead on that first down play on that drive. They get stuffed. They actually lost 4 yards in that play. And then you're thinking, man, what's going to happen? And then Shane Greathouse ties it with that 54-yard touchdown reception. And then it comes down to the leg of Mitch Jeter. So all the twists and turns made it more fun. I also think the fact that we get to enjoy this one a little bit more, because right after that Georgia game ended, you're like, oh my God, Notre Dame plays Penn State less than a week from now. So dealing with that and that quick turnaround, I feel like we didn't get to appreciate it enough. But this one we did get to appreciate. Before we turn the page to Ohio State, I'm glad that we're here to talk a little bit more about the Penn State win. So let's go over the 3 things that we liked and didn't like from this one, because this is one of the greatest wins of our lifetime. It might be the greatest win. I want to make sure we spend enough time on this before we start to look ahead to the national championship, because this was such a fun game from start to finish.
Yeah, and before I get into that, I think the last thing in terms of why this is more satisfying is the fact that, Georgia felt like a breakthrough, but then to stack another win like that on top of it, when if Notre Dame had lost to Penn State, I'm sure there would have been a narrative, well, they only beat Georgia because it was a backup quarterback. Well, guess what? Against Penn State, Notre Dame was running backups out there. They had Steve Angeli with a crucial drive. They had dudes that hadn't played all freaking season on the offensive line, and they still beat a more rested Penn State team anyway. So now they've arrived, and that's pretty much all there is to it to me. And let's also talk about who's arrived. The Notre Dame defensive backs. They have been incredible all season, and Thursday night was no different. Playing man coverage, had no respect for Penn State receivers, and why should they have? They were right. The Penn State receivers had 0 catches. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I only recall them throwing at Leonard Moore once, and it was on a rub route in the end zone. Another horrible throw from Drew Aller. Had good coverage anyways, wasn't close. Christian Gray, of course, makes the biggest play of the season with that interception when Aller tries to throw the ball across the middle towards the end of the game. And then even Rod Hurd got in there, cleaned up a sack when KVA had established some pressure early on in that game. Just what an incredible performance for those guys. And it'll be fascinating to see what this secondary does against Ohio State and how they play them. But there's not a group that you shouldn't be as confident in as I am in this one, because they're just incredible. And I think it all comes down from Freeman to Mike Mickens to the entire coaching staff. You see that Irish Access video, and Mike Mickens is just repeating himself saying, challenge, attack the ball, win. And that he just says it like 3 times in a row. And clearly it's a mentality that entire group has instilled within them, and they've really bought into that. And what another performance it was for those guys on Thursday night.
It almost felt poetic that Christian Gray was the one who made the interception there when you consider his ups and downs late in the season. Really starting with that game against USC, he got burned against Georgia, but he also came up with that huge interception return for the touchdown against the Trojans, and then he comes up here with a phenomenal catch, like great coverage, but made a great play on the ball to get the interception, keep his hands under it. And also I want to give some love to Jordan Clark, because he only played 15 snaps in this game because Penn State wasn't running a ton of 3 wide receiver sets, which doesn't lead Notre Dame to playing a ton of nickel defense. Well, when Jordan Clark was out there, even though it was 15 plays, they were allowed 15. He made a great pass breakup early in the game on a 3rd down. He put the clamps on who he was covering on that play where Christian Gray made that interception. So he is so good in coverage, and he has been such a blessing to this defense, because when Notre Dame added him in the transfer portal, no one was really sure what they were getting because he played injured throughout last season. He has been a great player for this defense, but to your point, like every single Notre Dame defensive back at this point, you can rely on them. And even though it wasn't Adon Schuler's best game, he was still making plays as well. So they just have so much talent across the board.
They do. And that's why I think Notre Dame does have a fighting chance in this game against Ohio State coming up, because this is the best secondary in the country. And I know people will make the argument for Ohio State or Texas. I don't think it's close. It's this group. They're playing without a first-round pick, the best player on their team, and they haven't missed a beat.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
When the lights are the brightest and the stakes are the highest, Ohio State's defense rises.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Victory Monday around here at Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. During today's show, we'll dive into Ohio State's focus heading into the national championship, as well as the importance of having Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson against Texas. But before we get to any of that, when the lights are the brightest and the stakes are the highest, Ohio State's defense rises to the occasion. They did it against Texas, they did it against Oregon, and they did it against Tennessee. This defense is playing in a way that it's going to be very hard for Notre Dame to go into the national championship in Atlanta and to try to find a crack or try to find an opening that they can exploit. Because this defense right now, from the four guys up front of the defensive line to the linebackers to the guys in the secondary, even if somebody goes down, they're able to overcome so much adversity and so many obstacles in the game. And it even happened all throughout the game against Texas. Outside of a couple drives, and even like almost three total, Texas really couldn't get anything going. Texas couldn't get anything flowing. The defense was right in Quinn Ewers' face. The defense was shutting down certain things Quinn Ewers wanted to do. There was absolutely no running game at all that Texas could try to get into. And that's because Ohio State's defense rose to the occasion in the Cotton Bowl. When you look at the playoff overall and you look at the Rose Bowl and the home game against Tennessee, what is one thing that we all remember? That Ohio State's defense made sure that the opposition couldn't get into a rhythm at all. Nico Iamaleava couldn't get flowing at all. He tried to do some things with his legs to open up some things through the air, couldn't do it. Quinn Ewers, just a few days ago, numbers will tell you one thing, but he couldn't get anything going, man. He couldn't get into a rhythm. He was not able to do the things that he wanted to do to exploit some hole in Ohio State's defense. Dylan Gabriel, nothing, man. Oregon got down 34-0. And if you were to talk to me before that game and say, Jay, do you think Ohio State could be up 21-0 against Oregon? I probably would have said no. If you said, would they have a 30-point lead against Oregon? Maybe not a 30-0 lead, but a 30-point lead at some point against Oregon. I would have said, no, you're crazy. And if you believe that, I need some of what you're on because you're crazy too. That's what happened. 21-0 was the lead before Tennessee scored for the first time. Ohio State scored 34 unanswered points. Those are the first 34 points in the Rose Bowl. This is because of the defense. Now, you may want to say, Jay, the offense scored a lot of those points. Okay. But when you get that goose egg out there on the scoreboard for any team and the one team's up by 21 or another team's up by 34, it's not just the offense doing a lot of things successfully. It's in large part because the defense is shutting down the opposition. And one thing I did before coming on here on a Monday was go back and look at some numbers from the past three games. Because one thing we said about Ohio State's defense, they didn't get pressure on the opposition as often as they needed to. Now, the second half of this regular season, Jim Knowles started to change some things up, and you saw more pressure on the quarterback week after week after week. But right now, if you even take away the QB hits, if you look at sacks, tackles for loss, and pass breakups, the numbers from these three games, these three playoff games that Ohio State has played, they're insane. Kind of stupid, honestly. I mean, stupid in a good way because nobody would have expected Ohio State to do this against Tennessee, against Oregon, and against Texas. Against Tennessee, Ohio State had 4 sacks, 7 TFLs, 9 pass breakups. Against Oregon, Ohio State had 8 sacks, 13 TFLs, and 9 pass breakups. It's really good, guys. And then against Texas, 4 sacks, 9 TFLs, 7 pass breakups. And Denzel Burke didn't play in the second half against Texas. He had an upper extremity injury that kept him out of the second half. And they were still able to do this. And Texas was still unable to get anything going to their receivers as far as getting them into the end zone and really any success outside at all. These guys were doing a lot of things right. The totals, that's 16 sacks in the postseason, 29 TFLs in the postseason, and 25 PBUs in the postseason. This is the stuff that you get from a championship level defense. And in the middle of the season, myself and Jeff Hunt came on this show and answered the question. Both of us were answering the question of if Ohio State has a championship level defense. And honestly, we both said yes. Now, after the Oregon game, this was after the halfway point. Normally, Jeff and I would do midseason grades and grade every position group. But I said, no, let's just change it up and change how we analyze the offense and defense this year. So we just ask championship level defense. We ask about the offense too. The defense answer was both a unanimous yes. And we're seeing that right now. But even what we're seeing right now from Ohio State's defense, they're playing in a way that is not what most people expected. I know I didn't expect this. I expected a lot of great play. I expected them to maybe have a goal line stand or two. Texas, we definitely saw that in that game. I didn't expect them to have at least 4 sacks in every playoff game. I didn't expect them to have 7 or more TFLs in every playoff game. I didn't expect them to have 7 or more PBUs in every single playoff game. This defense is not just prepared. They are ready to pass any test. And we have seen that from Ohio State's defense against Tennessee, who posed one threat, against Oregon, who posed a different threat, against Texas, which had a different threat that they could pose to Ohio State's defense. It doesn't matter who's out there. They're coming out there to shut you down, to not allow you to get into that end zone, to make you make some heroic plays and put together some miraculous drives to go out there to get into the end zone. Because Ohio State's defense is playing so well at every single level. The coaches are coaching so well across the board that these guys are prepared. They have gone through a grind. They have been re-engineered. They have had some added motivation along the way, and they are right now playing in a way that Notre Dame is an offense that can do some things successfully to some teams. I don't know if what Notre Dame's offense is known for will have any success against Ohio State's defense. Now, I mentioned that goal line stand that Ohio State had at the end of the game against Texas. Everybody knows you can't do anything in the middle against Ohio State on the goal line, but Texas had to try. And if they're going to try, at least do it on first down. First and goal from the 1 yard line. Try to run? No, nothing. Second and goal. You got pushed back a little bit. All of a sudden, you try to toss, which is very, very stupid, by the way. Ohio State tried that on 3rd and 1, and everybody and their mom was out there on Twitter saying, why do you do that? I even made a comment. There's nothing wrong with running a QB sneak on 3rd and 1. Didn't do it, but it's true. You should just run a QB sneak. All of a sudden, Texas on 3rd and goal. They tried to throw a pass to the left side of the end zone. Incomplete. Was a few yards away from the receiver. Quinn Ewers just didn't get the ball accurately to the guy. Then all of a sudden on 4th down, when you need somebody to make a play, Captain Jack said, I got you, LJ. I'll make that play. He beat the right tackle bad off the snap, got right around him. The next thing you know, his former teammate in Quinn Ewers is now the guy that's on his backside because of a strip sack of Jack Sawyer. He scoops that thing up and ran 80-plus yards to the end zone. Because when you needed somebody to make a play and needed somebody to rise to the occasion, the Buckeyes defense did it, and Captain Jack was the guy that made the biggest play of the night. Jack Sawyer made some plays. Caleb Downs-Knife threw on that second down toss. It did that thing. Lathan Ransom was back there too. This defense is elite. This defense is playing at a championship level, and Notre Dame better be ready for what's coming to them in Atlanta on January 20th, on Martin Luther King Day, might I add, when they have a date with the Buckeyes in the Natty.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. The monster matchup of the divisional round is Bills-Ravens. Each team dominated their wild card game, so the line is probably going to see some movement over the next week. Right now, FanDuel has the Bills favored at home by 1.5 points. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's talk about this Texas football team who once again, for the second year in a row, comes up short in the semifinals in a game it felt like they had every opportunity to win. And my first takeaway is that Steve Sarkisian and his offense failed us again. First of all, before I even get negative and go down that path, I just want to salute Pete Kwiatkowski, bro. Like, I remember in 2021 when we went 5-7 and everybody wanted him fired. Like, everybody wanted him fired. Like, they were, we were talking about him like he was the worst defensive coordinator in the world, And the bounce back, the resilience he's shown over the last 3 years has been remarkable. I mean, that defense this year was elite. That defense against Ohio State, after it looked like they were about to get ran out the gym, you know what I'm saying? Like, it looked like they were about to get ran out the stadium the first couple of drives. The way that defense performed was nothing short of amazing, right? Like, I would follow Pete Kwiatkowski into war. If he told me to jump, I would say how high. I would damn near die for this man, Pete Kwiatkowski, right now, right? Like, what he has done with this Texas defense is nothing short of remarkable, right? But yet, he keeps showing up in these big games, and Steve Sarkisian is nowhere to be found. Tony, if I advertise myself as the CD man, right? Like, I'm selling CDs. You should reasonably expect to pull up on me and I would have CDs, right?
For sure.
Okay. If I advertise myself as the barbecue man, right? You should be able to reasonably expect to pull up on me and I have some barbecue for you, right?
Sure. Right.
If I advertise myself as the weed man, you should reasonably expect to be able to pull up on me and I have some weed for you. Okay. Why did Steve Sarkisian advertise himself as the points man to CDC? And every time we need him, we can't get no points. Like, I'm looking at the biggest games of Steve Sarkisian's tenure at the University of Texas, outside of Alabama, right? I'm tired of talking about the game in Tuscaloosa. Cool, right? Broke clock is right twice a day. Outside of that game in Alabama last year, these are some of the biggest games of Steve Sarkisian's tenure at the University of Texas. And we saw him at Alabama. I mean, he was just scorching everybody, right? Dropping 40 on everybody. Now, all of a sudden, every time Texas plays a team that can match their talent level, we can't score the damn ball. With Steve Sarkisian, the points man don't got points for, like, what's going on, right? 2022 against Alabama, I know Quinn Ewers got hurt, but we're going against Bryce Young and Jameer Gibbs, and Pete Kwiatkowski's unit holds them to 20 points. But Sark only gave you 19. Then in 2022, we're going against TCU, number 4 team in the nation. They're in Austin, right? Darius Davis, Quentin Johnson, Max Dugan. One of the best offenses in college football. They went all the way to the national championship. Pete Kwiatkowski said, we're going to hold them to 17. I just need you to give me 18, Sark. Sark said, I got 10 for you today. I'm sorry. Okay. Right. This year. Well, no. Let's stay in 2022 against Washington, right? When we first started to see Michael Penix go on that run, the year before the playoff game, we played them in the Alamo Bowl. Washington scored 27 points. Texas only gave you 20. Then we look at this year, right? Georgia scored 30. I know they scored 30 in the first game, but they had 2 drives where they scored touchdowns where they had to get a combined 34 yards, right? Like, they were scoring touchdowns because Texas was turning the ball over and giving them short fields. But Steve Sarkisian in this offense only scored 15 points. Then you come back against Georgia in the SEC championship game, right? I mean, you got film, everything. You should be able to bounce back and take what you learned in the first game and be able to apply it in the second game. You go into overtime. You only give us 19 points. And then against Ohio State, Sark, you give us 14. 6 of the biggest games in Steve Sarkisian's tenure at the University of Texas, we've asked the point man to give us some points, and he's averaged 16 points a game in those matchups. Every time we face a team that can match the talent level of Texas, we look like a shell of ourselves on offense. And I'm starting to wonder why Steve Sarkisian looks so funny in the light. You know what I'm saying? How come every time we have these big games and the bright lights and Texas is on the biggest stage, Steve Sarkisian and this offense can't score any points? That's killing me. Now, Sark, I'm not done with you. Tony, I play a lot of Madden, bro.
Sure.
I watch a lot of football, bro. And obviously, I'm podcast host in front of podcast, right? I am very self-aware about it. I have never been on the 1 yard line and said, let's run a toss.
We stopped doing that in Madden 2002, bro.
I have never been on the 1 yard line. And you say, you know what I'm finna do? Throw it backwards. You know what I'm saying? Sark, from the moment you got here, you said we got to be SEC ready. We got to get big humans up front. We got to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage. Then on first down, you don't get 1 yard, and you like, ugh. Let me toss it backwards, right? You're going to tell your 330-pound on average offensive line, hey, bro, I don't think we could just run straight and get this yard. So we're going to toss the ball to Trey Watson. And if you go toss it, is Jada Blue in the medical tent? Like you're going to bring in your most explosive running back? You're going to bring in Trey Watson, no disrespect, but Jada Blue got a little bit more juice. You're going to toss it backwards and lose 7 yards, fam. Steve Sarkisian. The offensive guru, they talking about Steve Sarkisian's script, Steve Sarkisian, his formations, his motions, all of this. Whoop-de-whoop. I'm just tired of hearing it every damn matchup, right? Steve Sarkisian this, Steve Sarkisian that. And our boy Wonder comes up with a toss on second and goal from the 1 yard line. You can fall forward and get 1 yard, bro, and you call a toss. And of course, hindsight is 2020. If the toss would have worked, we wouldn't be talking about it right now, but it didn't, Sark. It didn't. A toss from the 1 yard line with that offensive line with 3 more chances. That loss is on you, Sark, more than anybody. And then, so much talk about Quinn Ewers, bro. So much talk about Bert Auburn. I never want to see Quinn Ewers again. I never want to see Bert Auburn again. I'm not here for the storylines. I'm here for the facts. If there's one player I never want to see in the Texas jersey again, I'm about to pass it to you, Tony. I know it's been almost 10 minutes, but if there's one player I never want to see in a Texas jersey again, there's no disrespect to him. I hope he has a great NFL career. I'm just, emotional right now. It's Cameron Williams. And we could talk about that strip sack, and now we got people talking about Jack Sawyer like he's Nick Bosa. We could talk about maybe Quinn Ewers should have been more aware. Whatever, bro. Watch the play. Like, God forbid Quinn Ewers expect his right tackle to block. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've been told all year he's the first rounder. Block, bro. Like I don't think I've ever seen a lineman whiff that bad in a moment that big, bro.
Yeah.
And we gonna blame Quinn Ewers for that? Like, for Cam Williams not even touching him? He didn't even pinch you know what I'm saying? Like, come on. Seriously, if I never see Cameron Williams in a Texas jersey again, I would be just fine. In the 3 biggest games this year against Georgia and Ohio State, 2 against Georgia, 1 against Ohio State, 14 pressures allowed, 4 sacks allowed, 5 penalties committed, and an average PFF grade of 50.8. Absolutely atrocious. I know he wasn't 100% healthy, but you decided to go out there on that field, and you were one of the biggest reasons we lost. Go ahead, Tony.
All right, Texas fans. No. When your head coach gets to the 1 yard line, right? And perhaps the toss play is very telling of the physicality in which your offense put on display against Ohio State. That, I'm gonna be honest, yeah, I play a lot of Madden too. Play some college football here and there. And John, I've been stopped on the one before. Everybody has. And I repeated to myself in these words, hell no, line that shit back up. And we're gonna run it again. I don't believe that they stopped us for 1 yard. I don't believe it. I don't give a damn, John, if you gotta run it 4 times. Run it 4 times and hang your hat on the fact that we just didn't get past the one. Like, hang your hat that we put hat on a hat and we just got stood up. Right? Not toss it and then just you give leeway when, like, and I hate it when offensive minded coaches get cute inside the 5. Don't do that. I say that when watching NFL. I say they've been watching college. Stop getting cute inside the 5-yard line. Literally go forward. 5 yards, 3 yards, 2, 4, 1. Doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Doesn't matter. Run the damn ball. Put a hat on a hat. You got 1,500 pounds or however much we got on across this offensive line. I know for a fact somebody on that defensive line is getting pushed back. Somebody. Everybody didn't get through. And I heard Sarkisian's presser after the game, and I couldn't tell who was on the other side, and maybe it got a little leaky over there. But if you block it all up, it's a touchdown. Duh, that's any play. If you block any play up, it's a touchdown. We all know that. I didn't need wizardry to happen right there. I don't know why you decided to use your power back even in that situation, and say, oh, we're gonna toss it out, and then all of a sudden we're 7 yards back from where we were gifted, getting to the 1. That's where the game was won and lost, John. Wasn't the refs? Wasn't this stuff happening in the first half? And maybe we can get all into that stuff later. But right there, where it was tick for tack for Texas and Ohio State, excuse me, and you decided to give it all away on a toss play, and then maybe it's just irony that the ball is just stripped out of Quinn Ewers' hands at that point and taken back for a touchdown. Not on him. I'm not saying it on him. I'm actually not getting on Quinn Ewers' ass today, John. Yeah, but maybe that's just irony. And yes, if you can't score, I watched another show yesterday, and even Sarkisian said himself. If you can't score on the 1 yard line, then maybe you just don't deserve to win. But I'm hoping that he was talking to himself when he said that. Maybe, Sark, if you can't coach the team to score on the 1 yard line, you don't deserve to coach. Maybe, Sark, if you can't get your offense across the 1 yard line, you don't deserve to coach offense. Maybe, Sark, if you stop being cute and shit when you get down there and don't run toss plays, because nobody does that anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, John, you can't outsmart yourself in the game before the national championship. And again, just thinking about the play over and over, because honestly, this will be the conversation all week. It doesn't matter what you own up to. It doesn't matter what you will be feeling and saying the game could have done this, could have done that. It was right there. You could have tied the game up, and then we were talking about a whole different ball game at that point. And then even then, Sark said another thing. He said, even if I didn't score there, I would have been okay. Because maybe you put and I can't remember how much time was left at that time in the game, but maybe you put Will Howard now. You have time for one possession, and then it could be 2 minutes or whatever the case is. Okay, but you gotta bet on that and not just give it away. Like, you give so much away with a toss play, and I don't understand that. Sark, as you said, the boy wonder. Everybody has raved about this guy all season long, and he, along with a couple other issues that have reared their heads around for Texas, showed up in this game. Everything that has been an issue for Texas, including Sark, showed up.